name's Sarah Burke. I'm with Auros Knowledge Systems, and it's my pleasure to introduce the next couple of speakers. First up is Brad Walker. Brad is an accomplished professional with extensive experience in manufacturing, engineering, and operational excellence. He has a strong background in Six Sigma methodologies and has led projects that saved hundreds of millions across various industries. He's trained over 10,000 students in continuous improvement methodologies, mentored thousands of black belts, and his expertise spans across automotive, heavy equipment, alternative energy, medical device manufacturing, and food processing industries. Currently, Brad is a manager of operational excellence at General Motors, where he coaches and mentors leadership in design for Six Sigma methodologies, and he has the title of Global Process Guardian for DFSS. Brad holds a Master of Science in Manufacturing Management from Kettering University and a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering Technology from Purdue. He's certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt and holds various certifications in statistical engineering and robust engineering methodologies. Today, Brad's going to tell us about how General Motors is making Auros more useful for sharing and leveraging continuous improvement projects.
Thank you. Welcome. Hope you enjoyed break. Continuous improvement methodology. So you may know that as design for Six Sigma, 8D, all of those types of methodologies to me would kind of roll up into the lessons we've learned and what I'm going to share today and can help you with all of those types of implementations. I had a slide about me. I'm not going to cover too much of it because Sarah did a great job of introducing me, but most people kind of want to know where'd you get that accent from, and that wasn't in there. So I'll say I earned it honestly. I grew up in Indiana, went to Purdue. After graduating, boiler up. After graduating, moved to Texas. So it's kind of a West Texas, Indiana accent, but it is natural. So appreciate that. DFSS at GM, we've been doing it about 24 years. So we've learned lots of lessons. We could be here hours sharing everything we did, but we're going to just kind of talk about one aspect of it and how we pivoted what we were asking for and presenting to students in order to get them to leverage using Auros and do a better job of being able to share the knowledge transfer. So there's a lot on this slide. I'm just going to cover a few of the highlights. Basically in 2000-ish, we started DFSS, and it was very consultant-driven. So we would try to target really special, high-value projects. And after about 10 years of doing that, only 7% of our people were certified. And in 2008 and 9, many people in this area know about the economic hardship. GM went through bankruptcy, and upon emerging from bankruptcy, a VP of engineering kind of decided, man, that DFSS, that evidence-based decision, maybe we should share it, and everybody that makes a technical decision, anybody that has to make, what supplier's the best, what requirement do we need, maybe we want to capture that information and make sure we shared it. So we tried to pivot in 2010 about making DFSS more about how you do your everyday work and how you do your everyday assignments. And we made inroads to that, but it wasn't until we pivoted recently with Auros that we were really able to hopefully achieve that connection between people making these evidence-based decisions and just executing their day-to-day job. So we are specifically talking about DFSS. Again, don't worry if you don't know it or if you're doing DMAIC or DMEDI or something like that, but our process was identifying an opportunity, defining requirements, going out and talking to customers, finding out what they really want, creating those requirements, then spending time innovating or whatever it takes to develop concepts. Once you have your concepts, revise that concept, make it as robust as possible, and then implement and verify that your objectives were met, your customers are happy. And probably the first trap we fell into, kind of understandable at the time, is that this was documented in PowerPoint. And so people would want a template, and the original PowerPoint template before my time was 72 pages. And so people would make an evidence-based decision, and there would be 72 pages in their write-up. And why do you have this page? Well, it's in the template. Why do you have this page? It's in the template. So very template mindset driven. And the way we tried to address that and make it better is we took pages out of the template. We finally got it down to 12 pages. And it was still, people were so dogmatic about it or so practical about using that template. How do we make it simpler? Well, let's create a one-pager. So we created a one-page summary of all that. And the problem with all of it is kind of what the first speaker today talked about, it was a passive search. So no matter where you stored it, it was going to be a passive search. And for about the first 20 years, we had this database called GDM, Global Document Management Database. But basically, the projects were stored by folders. So if your department, based on what product you were releasing, you had a folder in this structure. And so you would put your PowerPoint in that folder. And maybe your coworkers would know where that folder is and they could search it. But it still required them to actively open up the folder, look at the file names, and say, oh, that might apply to me, and then download that project and read it. So in about 2000, we heard, like I wasn't the one at the time, I was on the department, but it wasn't my decision. My boss heard about people using Auros and storing their best practices in Auros. So we thought, hey, instead of this complicated folder structure in GDM, can we leverage Auros? So our original attempt, and this is a somewhat failed, we learned from it and would still use it, but we basically we set these projects up as KPACs. And so hopefully from what you guys, from the first question, it looks like most of you probably know what a KPAC is, but it's just a standard work. So the original intent, and we were just ignorant of the assessment process that we'll get to, required teams, once they finished, they would do their PowerPoint, and then they would open up Auros and start putting in the information into Auros in a KPAC. And it was still PowerPoint driven, so they're still going to attach this PowerPoint, and if you really want to know the details of it, you're going to have to open up the PowerPoint. But we had 11 mandatory input fields, things like the leader's name, the sponsor's name, the title of the project. And we had 57 optional input fields, because basically every time a group or a department would hear that we're using Auros, they would have some ideas or some fields that they wanted to track and record. So we would just add that field, and then they could sort Auros through their fields. But we do a monthly survey. So here's some of the fields, just screenshots of all these fields, and it gets into the financial savings, and there's 1 million categories of financial savings when it really just boils down to time and dollars for the most part. So it was very complicated. We do a monthly survey to see how we can improve and what the feedback is. And as of right now, like I said, in 2010, we had certified about 7% of our population. Now it's mandatory if you're in product development, you get certified. So there's 20-some thousand black belts and green belts running around GM. So we've trained quite a lot of people. To get certified, you have to complete 2 projects. So that means there's 40,000 either Auros assessments or PowerPoint documents floating around GM to cover that certification. So we survey our users every month and just ask how we can make the process better. What could we do to make your job easier? And we got quotes like, I'm confused on how to start my project after training. And Auros is complicated and hard to use. I'm sure you've probably never heard that. I want a template that guides me through the process. I want a reference for what to do when I can't find it in my training. Our training files are PDF, and they're week-long training, so there's 400 to 800 slides, so it's really hard for them to find the exact piece of information that they may want to leverage the project that they're working on. They want to also be able to search what other people have done, what work has been done before. And in the old system, you could do it. If you were really good at Auros, people like Holly and Daryl over there, I think she calls herself a librarian because she spent so much time playing with the database. And she had a group that she could kind of govern and librarians. So if someone has a project idea, she would take the time to search the database and see if it was done or not. But for the average user that wasn't really familiar with Auros, it was really difficult to share and find out lessons learned from other groups because we had structured it in that KPAC format. And that last piece of information, I just want to know what other people are doing in this exact same situation. So we took all this voice of the customer from our users, and the one that kind of really dropped the bomb on me was we had somebody said, I did this work, I put it into PowerPoint to make it look like DFSS, which is exactly what we don't want. We want to give people tools and methodologies so that they know how to use them on every day when they're at their desk making a decision, that they know the types of things we want and what we're looking for. We don't want to make it so complicated that they have to create a PowerPoint after the fact. So we pivoted from putting projects into those K-Packs into an assessment. And during that process, we did have about 1 minute where someone on the team said, hey, do we need a database at all? Should we just let these people make evidence-based decisions, let their supervisor agree or disagree whether it's right or not? And quickly we decided, no, we need a database. We want to share these lessons learned. So just in case anybody out there is wondering, did you think about killing the database? And we did for about a minute, but decided that we do need a database. So what we did, we pivoted to an assessment. So instead of having to document their work in PowerPoint, they can do it in an assessment. And if you look at the right side of that slide, those are literally each row represents a K-Pack or standard work. And so instead of doing a whole project as a K-Pack, we've set the project up as an assessment where they pull in the standard work. It is the individual steps. Now, earlier I showed that we teach the IDDOV model. And if you're a master black belt or you have experience in that, you can pretty much instantaneously translate IDDOV to these questions. But the layperson, the person just leaving training, couldn't do that. They just couldn't make that connection. So we've realized if we just present the process in standard English, it's a lot easier for people. So literally questions like, what was the assignment that you've been given? What is the business reason for this project? What are your expected deliverables? What was the decision? What was implemented? What was the value of the implementation? These are the types of questions that we have in our assessment. So each step is its own K-Pack. So when you have those voices, hey, I'm confused on what to get started, we think the English version of this really helped that. The Auros is difficult. We've tried to minimize the number of input fields, and I want to know what other people are doing, and I want the supporting documents when I need them. Because of the way we did the assessments in the K-Packs now, we have all that, so I'll show screenshots of that. Here's a screenshot of just a given project. I just copied the first 4 or 5 questions, and as they answer the questions, they put their evidence right in there. They can attach any supporting document that they need, a URL, a thumb, a picture, or a document, Excel or PowerPoint, can all be attached to the individual question or the individual K-Pack that they're doing. The voice about I want supporting documents or I want to understand the reference material when I'm working on my project. The nice thing about setting up the steps as K-Packs, now we can kind of teach the step. And the thumbnails there, those are little video clips that we have, excerpts from training or meetings that might very specifically talk about that particular question. And then at the bottom there, in the supporting documents, we used to maintain a SharePoint site with a lot of the reference material, so people would have to find the reference site. They would have to find where on the reference site it is to get the information. And now we've just embedded all those supporting documents right in there when they're doing the project. As far as having examples of what other people are doing, again, if you're familiar with Auros, you're familiar with I'm going to back up. I don't think I have one on here. Oh yeah, this little symbol that looks like binoculars. If you're in a view of an assessment and you don't know how to quite answer that particular question, you can double click those binoculars and it pops up with what other people are doing. The default view is 10 projects, so you click on that, and the 10 most recent projects that were entered in the database, you can read what they wrote for that particular question. You can change that default view to be hundreds if you want. So those features or those voices of we don't know what to do, we get started, we think the questions help that. I want the reference material, we've got the reference material built right in. I want to know what other people are doing. It's really easy to benchmark what other people are doing with just a simple click of the button. So we think we've addressed all those. I'm not saying we're perfect yet. So some feedback we've gotten lately has all been positive. We've asked people how they think. I actually had probably about 12 people now call me up and go, hey, I did my DFSS projects. Can I use this assessment for my regular work? Which I wanted to do backflips because that is exactly the point of it. After you finish training, we want you to use this. We never had that with the PowerPoint template. I mean, out of the 7 years I worked there, I don't think anybody called me up and said, hey, can I use this PowerPoint template for regular work? So we had that empirical evidence that it really wasn't working. And even about a week and a half ago, I had a gentleman call me who's a coach, and he hadn't seen the new assessment. So I just demoed it for him, and he said, if you're starting a church of Auros, I want to be a deacon. So, you know, I get the vibe. Some of you asked that, you know, hey, how hard is it to get started, and the scoping type issue, and I agree with everything that was said. I will say that the Auros team did a really good job as we were meeting, Alma, Josh, Bridget, and Sarah, as we were meeting to kind of talk about what the feedback we were getting. Basically, Josh and the team just said, you guys are using Auros wrong. If you use the assessments, you'll get a better result. And I would say we probably spent like a month trying to make it perfect, what we thought was perfect, and Josh just kept saying, just implement it, just try something and implement it. And so we thanks to Josh that we did, and there's still updates we can make, still improvements we can make, and we're making, but it's been very positive. And people that had to put their Greenbelt project into the old version of Auros compared to those that are doing the assessment are just really, really happy. I mean, crazy happy. And I don't want to make, like, I don't think anybody ever loves a database. No one ever wants to type extra stuff in. But if you can just make it as easy for them as possible, try to be as empathetic with them, live the process yourself, I think you can achieve that. You can get people to use it more. So that's really, here's some data of us, just GM in total. We have over 100,000 K-Packs. We have over 1,600 COPs, communities of practice, so areas where people are playing with Auros, 6,500 subscriptions, and almost 20,000 core users. So we are using it at GM. We are leveraging it for DFSS. That's really all I had to share. Wanted to save some time for questions. Thank you. Yep. Great question. Yeah, and there's still some hold up with the way that we were using the old K-Pack to do presenting. So we think it was easier or more natural, but Josh is assuring me that we can get there with the assessment as well. Now I'm kind of surprised. Making this change, I was really worried about that because every group kind of reports out their status and their counts and all that. And kind of shifting, I thought my phone would be ringing off the hook. What are you doing? Switching Auros. Didn't really get too many of those. So jury's still out, but trusting Josh, I think we'll be able to do the report out we need to do. Definitely, GM doesn't have the AI version yet of Auros. We're probably like a year from that being implemented, and looking forward to that assisting as well too.
Just a basic question. I know you mentioned that you have the documents inside of the K-Pack that you need to reference on the process, which I think is good, but that, for us, is managed inside of our other databases, right? So like EIT would manage if there was an update to a document. How do you manage the updates to the documents in Auros?
So those attachments, yeah, that's just me right now, like as the guardian of it, yeah. But our other alternative is it's on SharePoint, which is the same thing. And like, not problems with you guys, but they migrated our SharePoint site, and then our links wouldn't update. Like, so there was a whole other issue with SharePoint and all that other stuff too. So again, I don't know if this is the perfect solution because of that, but it's the best solution I have.
Brett, I got a question from the app.
Okay.
Have you been able to quantify the financial value of DFSS projects?
We, like, sometimes, so when doing, great question, difficult to answer because doing something for the future is sometimes hard to quantify. How do you estimate if you wouldn't have done a good job on design or if you wouldn't have made it more robust? So there are projects that's a specific cost reduction or something like that we can quantify. But for a lot of projects, it's just known that it's just necessary good work to do. So we do quantify some, but I would probably say 80% of them probably are not quantified.
Jeff?
So understand that went from a transition of using a KPAC to represent a passive documentation process to an assessment-based process. In fact, I know of another one at Auros as well. I'm curious, what was it like for you what made you decide to take on the comfortable model of using a KPAC as a documentation tool,
Yep.
to use it as a work, engagement tool, which the assessment does? What made you decide to do it? What got you to change your mind about doing it that way?
Probably the shortest, accurate answer is desperation. So for 20 years, I've been trying to fix training material, trying to fix PowerPoint templates. And we were kind of in the middle. I'll be honest, when I met the Auros team, before they, hey, we should do a seed on this and kind of get going, I kind of just thought we were going to fix the input fields of the KPAC. That was kind of my vision. Hey, I'll call Auros. We'll figure out how to streamline this. Now, I'll also, since we're kind of good on time, I hated Auros. As a coach, when it was in the KPAC, someone would call me up, oh, can you help me with Auros? I'd be like, oh, there's a video for that. Go watch the video. And so I didn't, as a coach, I didn't even really understand Auros. Now that I understand Auros, our KPACs aren't that bad. If I go back and do them, I can do a KPAC now in a minute. Another big advantage that we didn't even realize that we were going to gain until we actually implemented it is by the structure of the KPAC, and because there were all those fields, people didn't put the project in until the project was over because they needed to kind of know the answers to those fields. Now with the assessments, I do a Greenbelt training. I literally say, hey, everybody open your computers. Our homepage is Socrates. Go to Socrates, type in Auros, and I guide them to our community of practice. I say create new, and literally right there on day one of training, because everybody has to do a project, now we have a clock of when that project starts. So when someone asked about monitoring, prior to this, I could never know how many projects are ongoing. I could know how many were completed because there were that many in KPACs, but I never knew how many were ongoing. Now, there could be some ongoing that aren't doing this, but for the vast majority of people that are getting trained, the assessment starts on day one of training, so I can even track the progress of the project when I couldn't do it before. So a lot of advantages.
If you don't mind, I want to tie a couple questions together. So someone at the back talked about the mind shift change that's necessary. Was a question to me earlier. There's an answer to that question. To Prem's question about, hey, why are you talking about the theory stuff and not calling it a solution? Because when you talk about the solution, you had a solution when it was a KPAC, but it was the old way of thinking. It's a document, let's put it in here. It's a document, someone will come and find it. But when you think about knowledge aware as a technique, now we start to think about the assessment, the model data footprint, the process managing, curating the work, and it's tough. It's tough, right, to change?
Yep.
But the mindset change, you think knowledge aware you might get a benefit, hopefully as good as what you achieved.
I will say the analogy works really well. Your phone, passive and the map versus the nav. I think I could use that when I'm selling it internal to GM as well. Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, so I work with Brad. So one of the things, too, that I found with the new system is, because I'm one of those people that likes to look up stuff all the time. And yeah, the old KPAC system was a lot easier than SharePoint or wherever, or GDM where we were storing it. But this is kind of nicer because, when I coach people, it's much easier to kind of get a flag where they're at. But the second thing is that if I have something that I think is kind of wonky, before I can only really search by title of the project, versus this gives me a lot greater capability to find better data.
One of my customers, a happy customer.
Brad, have you considered implementing this for DMAIC or other continuous improvement?
Yeah, great
methodologies?
question. So I'm in this group called OPEX. We have DMAIC as well that all my colleagues are doing. They're using a SharePoint database, and they're struggling. I've been trying to get them to use this. I've even created a demo. So where we have 13 questions, to me, you could easily make 5. Define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. That'll work as well. The reason, to me, my personal opinion, DMAIC projects, they're kind of scoped so that people can just follow DMAIC. The Design for Six Sigma projects are usually just kind of more ambiguous and broad, and it's a lot harder for people to find the actual decision that they're trying to make. So that's why I think the questions work better for us. But for DMAIC, I would be more than happy to put DMAIC in as my 5 K-packs, and I think it would work great for even that type of framework. So 8D, if you're at Ford, I think it would work as well. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Brad.